All right, so we've talked a little bit about choices that people make, but another set of theories go out to explain why people commit crime, and they point really to the social structure of society. And so when we think things about social structure, we're thinking more about segments of society and how it is arranged. So it's like an arrangement that moves to crime. And so when we think about things like this, right, if we think about harmful effects, right, that didn't keep what we had, when we talk about this kind of stuff, right, we think about patterns that we often see. When we think about like poor social structure, so or ineffective, the kinds of things that come to mind are going to be things like poverty. Maybe there is low opportunity. Could also be a situation where there's income inequality. Lack of housing. Could be low wages. And things like this, right? So we think about all these things that happen, and this creates like a sort of deprivation model, right? So we know all these things, and we are all associated, and we often find that this, when we have poor social structure with all these things related, we tend to see higher incidences of crime. Now, the thing with, any kind of theory or explanation or pattern that we see is that, if patterns do not have to exist, right? There is nothing that says that a pattern has to exist or that it needs to behave in a certain way. Instead, we think about like what a pattern is, or we see this pattern, it suggests that there is an explanation that should come into play. Sorry, sip of coffee. So when we think about this sort of like process that comes into crime, right? If we think about, we'll use Glenn again. So Glenn's here, and he, has his stringy hair. And we think about his path to crime, right? So if we know that there is this decision. So there's a decision time that comes into place. And there is, we'll use fiery red for the arson of burning down his landlord's home. How we think about this, how does this, what impacts him? How does social structure do it, right? Because if we know that there's poverty, and this is impacting the decision, how does this like end up, right? And what does it mean to do this? When we think about things like poverty like that, right? We know that people are broke, right? And I don't know if you've ever had the joy of being broke. It sucks a lot because you can't do anything. It's frustrating. And, you're basically always chasing money of some kind. You're always behind. What's a good truism, right? Just one thing, like 1,000K is not a lot of money to have. If you're like, I'm 1,000 here. Yeah, like whatever, right? But 1K is a lot to owe. right? And so people who are entrenched in poverty, kind of have to deal with this kind of process frequently, right? Where you're always chasing money, things like this. So when you think about being broke, right, it is super stressful because you're wondering how I'm going to make it to the end of the month. How am I going to pay for my bills? How am I going to eat? Get my car, get to work, things like that, which is further complicated by, maybe you have a lack of opportunity. So maybe there are no jobs nearby. Maybe what jobs there aren't very good. Maybe it's highly competitive and you can't, really get ahead because of that. There's this this is a pretty interesting book I highly recommend called When Work Disappears. And basically it covers how businesses left downtown or urban Chicago and the impact it has on communities. But when you have these pressures, right, because, this doesn't change the fact that, you may have medical bills or a family or anything like that. All of these contribute to a strain or pressure, right? We can feel it. It can be sort of stifling. It can be, noxious and, permeates everything. You're surrounded by it. It can't go away. And you're constantly reminded of it all the time, right? You don't really get like a break from thinking about like, oh yeah, well today I'm not broke. Nope, you're still broke no matter what. And, people will be like, well, if you quit getting your $5 lattes, maybe that would do it. You could save for a trip to Italy. I'm like, okay, well, how many trips to Italy have you been to? None. That's what I thought. That's a joke, but point being is that we have the strain and pressure, right? And so the belief is for this kind of thing, if we go back to the sort of decision process, if we have strain, and we know that this is going to influence the actor, and it's also going to influence the decision, right? This could end up being a result of pressuring and moving people to commit crime. So there is, if you think about, this could be a reason why you steal. You steal because you can't get a job, or there's poor opportunities, there's a lack of education, so on. You steal in order to sell, in order to survive. Or it could be that, because there's a poor opportunity in certain areas, right? You could get some drugs and then become a dealer and then, survive. Cross that because that was bad. Or because there have been studies that shown that, being broke and being poor, right, increases stress and has a harmful effect on the body, mentally, physically, always doing that, they're more subject to pronounced fits of rage, or not rage, that's a poor way to, frustration, anger. In that program, right? So in the case of this place, if you're existing in these kinds of environments, right, crime is perhaps not unexpected. Not unexpected, so it doesn't mean that everyone reacts this way, because that's not true, right? But there are sort of these pressures. I spelled that incorrectly. Good God. So it's not like necessarily like unexpected, but as a result of it, right, it creates these pressures on people to adapt, conform, survive, things like that. So in the case of Glenn, then, Glenn, or whoops, I used his real name. Crap. In the case of the uncle, then, poor. He was shoved out. His home was taken away. Landlord was a jerk. And this yielded the decision to commit arson and to get vengeance and express, frustration and rage for a situation. That could be one way of explaining his behavior in that instance. Now, a big thing that often comes up, right, is that, we think about, what do we do for situations like this, or why does it matter? How do we correct and adapt, change, things like this? So a big thing that often comes up then is that we need to develop opportunities for low income and poverty stricken areas. So, this is going to be things like where we encourage investment. So maybe that's like providing job opportunities. Maybe that's reforming an area. Maybe this is increasing access to education. Maybe this is something where we, some people have advocated for doing meditation or mindfulness practices. This has also been an advocate for social welfare programs. Such as like WIC to help with food assistance. This could be a rent subsidy. This could be, some sort of, like healthcare provided and so on. And the point is to relieve stress related to poverty, stress, pain, and move people to other opportunities and other behaviors, and to support them so they don't feel like they have to commit crime. So social structure stuff is more, not necessarily, it's about correcting inequalities. To lead to decreases in crime. Okay, so I think we've effectively covered that section. So